everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm sharing this drawing tutorial of 5 flowers completely drawn with brush pens. We're going through all of them very slowly, so if you'd like to speed things up, I'll add timestamps to the video and feel free to also watch this in double or triple speed. But without further introductions, let's get started. I'm using an Archer&Olive dot grid notepad, but pretty much any paper will work for this. Brush pens almost work like watercolors, so a sturdier paper will allow you to blend better, but the blending we're doing today is quite minimal. Also, if you don't have brush pens, you could easily create similar flowers with watercolors or different markers. Anyway, let's start with the first flower where we'll use bright pink and some green tones. I'll show you all the brush pen colors and make small swatches with the color numbers at the end of each flower, but please keep in mind that you can absolutely change these colors and use whatever pens you have at home. Anyway, I'm gonna start by drawing these very simple, standard flower shapes, and I'm kinda imagining these 3 separate groups, which will make a little bit more sense once we connect them with a stem. Don't worry too much about the shapes, they don't all need to look perfect or have all 4 or 5 petals. After the bright color, I'm gonna take a much lighter pale pink and draw some extra petals around these shapes and also blend this color slightly towards the center of the flowers. Doing this is gonna smooth out the color ever so slightly and create a slight gradient to the brighter color. It will also add a tiny bit of this darker color to the lighter pen, so when you draw petals around the first flowers, they might look a little bit darker than this pen on its own. But after that, we'll start drawing some small leaves using the lighter, bright green color first. I'm drawing these small leaves around the flower groups, and then we're switching to a slightly darker green to draw this stem and add some darker leaves. I'm also darkening the inner points of some of the light leaves ever so slightly to almost create this small shadow in them. So that's it for our first very bright and fun flower that will work with many different color combinations. And now let's move on to the second one. We're gonna use some yellow tones on this one and start by drawing these yellow dots with the lighter yellow shade. I'm not sure if these are flowers or berries. I guess they could be whichever you want. Again, I made 2 of these separate groups of yellow balls, and then we'll darken the lower parts and the edges of these very slightly with a darker yellowy orange color. In my experience, brush pens tend to dry a little bit lighter, so the color difference might look more harsh in the beginning, but it usually tones down a bit once the color is dry. Also, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that if you feel intimidated to start drawing the flowers directly on the paper, go ahead and draw a light pencil sketch first. I think this could definitely help with the placement of the flowers, especially if you're drawing different branches. I'm gonna be honest and tell you that I practiced all of these flowers before filming this video, so that's why I felt confident without the sketch this time. But yeah, if drawing these feels tricky in the beginning, that's totally normal, and I promise you'll get better after practicing these basic shapes a few times. Anyway, we're actually going to use the same green colors we used on the first one, but I'm also going to add a darker brown to the branch. This dark brown isn't necessary, but I think it darkens the lower part of the branch ever so slightly and looks nice with the yellow color. I'm then taking the darker green color and using this for the rest of the branch, and I'm going over the brown a little bit with this one too, again to blend these colors slightly. After the branch, we'll start drawing these long, skinny leaves around the flower groups again. I started with the lighter green color, and you could either leave the tops of the leaves slightly rounded or make them pointy. Both would definitely work here. After the lighter green color, we're doing the same thing with a darker one, just to add some variation in the coloring. You could also add a darker line in the center of some of the lighter leaves, but I didn't do that to all of them. It's quite difficult to create thin, even lines with brush pens, so I think this might be easier to do with colored pencils, for example. Colored pencils or a thin black pen could really take some of these flowers to another level. You could use them to create slightly darker outlines or just add some small details that are harder to create with brush pens. However, I wanted to keep this tutorial only about brush pens, so we are not going to do that today, but I just wanted to give you some extra options to consider. Now let's move on to the third flower, which is gonna be some sort of lavender. We'll start with a light purple color and basically draw the main shape of the flower with this one, and then slightly darken the same shapes with 2 other pens. So the next one is this pretty dark red shade. If you have a darker purple, that could work too, but in my pen collection, this red was the closest to what I was looking for. I'm adding these darker dots pretty much on top of the lighter color, focusing a little bit lower on the shapes, and I'm also trying not to cover everything with this one. Then we'll take the lighter color again and go over those red dots to blend the colors slightly. I've noticed that the blending effect really depends on the paper you're using. I practiced on another notebook and for some reason the colors blended a little bit easier on that one. On this Archer&Olive paper, it almost seems like the paper grips the color more, so it doesn't move as much. But it doesn't really matter. Adding another layer of the first color will make those purple areas slightly darker anyway and adds this in-between shade. Then we'll take out the final color, which is a very dark grayish purple, and I'm gonna do the same thing but focus this mainly on the center parts of the flower. This is basically gonna look black over the other shades, but it will add a very dramatic shadow effect. However, if you like the lighter look more, feel free to skip this step or use a slightly lighter color. Now the flower part is done, so we can move on to the leaves. I have 2 shades of green again, and we are starting with the lighter one to draw these thin, long leaves around the flower. And then I'm gonna draw bigger, rounder leaves towards the bottom. You don't need to do both of these shapes. I just thought it looked nice and added some extra detail. Then we'll take out the darker green color, and as we've done with the previous flowers, I'm using it to darken the stem and also add a shadowy outline to the bigger leaf shapes and to the lower parts of the leaves in general. But that's it for the lavender, and now we have 2 more flowers to go. This next one is probably my favorite in this video, and I'm gonna start with these 2 yellow colors and draw 2 center circles for these flowers first. After drawing with the lighter yellow, I'll darken the lower and kind of the center part of the circles with a more brownish yellow shade. It adds a little bit of shadow and dimension to the shape. Then we'll take out this light purple blue color and start drawing these daisy style petals around the center circles. I tried to vary the petal shapes by leaving slightly bigger gaps between some and keeping some of the shapes closer together. After this, we are taking a slightly darker blue color and using it to draw some shadow lines inside the petals and lightly to outline some of them as well. This creates a little bit of detail and shadow to the flowers and makes them look more polished in a way. It might look a bit harsh at first, but it's okay. We'll go over everything with the first color again. So you'll see that again, it acts like an in-between color and helps to blend these lines better. However, try to still leave some of the original light color in the petals. Those spots will look like the most highlighted areas and add variation to the color. But after all that, it's time to draw some leaves again. For this flower, I chose a more earthy, muted green, and we'll draw these quite loose, spikier leaves, first around the flowers and then connecting them with a stem and adding bigger leaf shapes at the bottom. It's hard to explain exactly what I'm doing here, but that's why there's a video where you can hopefully see what I mean. Then, as you probably guessed, we're gonna take another green shade and use it to add deeper shadows and details to the center parts of the leaves. So the same idea as before, just for different leaf shapes. If you want, you can add a final round of shadowing to the flowers with the darker shades, but once you're happy with this one, let's move on to the fifth and final flower, which is gonna be a slightly darker one. We'll start with the same muted brownish yellow shade to draw a small circle in the middle, and then we'll take the same dark red we used on the third flower. This one will have very rounded petals, and I drew 5 of them around the small center circle. Try not to go too far with the dark color so you don't accidentally cover the yellow part. I also quickly took out the green shade we'll use later for the leaves and used it to draw a lower part for these 2 flower buds. I wanted the green part to be on top of the red flower part, so it was easier to draw it first. Anyway, we'll then take the same dark purple we used earlier and use it to add these very dark shadows and outlines to the petals again. Again, this color looks almost black, but that's okay. We want this to be very dark. And then as before, we'll take the first color and slightly blend between the 2 shades to make the dark lines appear a little bit softer. After this, we're gonna draw some spiky leaves and stems again. This time I'm drawing the leaves from the same spot on the stem, which creates a slightly different look than the other flowers. I also tried to keep the stem lines pretty straight and almost angular in this one compared to the softer, curvier stems in the other flowers. Then we're gonna take a darker green and do exactly what we've done before. So slightly darken the center and especially the lower parts of the leaves and some parts of the stem as well. But there we have it. That's it for these 5 brush pen flowers. I really hope you found this video helpful and that you can use these in your journals or planners or wherever you need them. If you decide to try these at home, let me know how it went for you. And if this was your first time around here and you'd like to see more art and journaling content, definitely consider subscribing. But I guess that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!